Follow the War Sports channel on YouTube, Hot Garbage Sports with me, Coach Ryan D. All right, let's wrap up this KK bunch of jerks Montreal Canadiens saga. I know this is old news. Everybody knows that Jesperi Kotkaniemi is headed to Carolina via offer sheet and is the only third accepted offer sheet that wasn't matched in the last 15 years since the 2005 CBA. If you want to know more on the history of this transaction and specifically how offer sheets work, link above. The video is hilarious. What an entertaining way to walk through one of the more boring, pragmatic scenarios in the NHL, which is offer sheets. All right, so let's get on to the impacts for this for Montreal and for Carolina. There's a lot of sentiment out there from Habs fans that they're very happy about getting this and not matching it. They weren't thrilled with the way KK was playing. His style of play isn't their cup of tea, and they're happy to get a first and a third back and move on from there. Carolina is happy to get in a number 4 overall draft pick. We're going to address both. Let's start with the Habs fans. Now, Habs fans, however you want to feel about this trade, feel free to feel away. You can be right either way. Absolutely either way. I have my opinion, to which I'll give as we get later on in this video, but wanting a first and a third back is a fine thought because I understand the way that Jesperi plays may not be for everyone, especially Canadian hockey fans. And that's not just Canadian with an E, that's Canadian with an A. Canadian hockey fans like a certain style of game, and Jesperi just doesn't play that. But it doesn't mean it's not effective. You get out from something that you may or may not like at $6.1 million. It's only a 1-year deal, but you do. And you're able to transition that into picks. The challenge about that is that the picks you're getting back aren't going to be as valuable as KK's pick himself. So he was a number 4 overall draft pick, and you don't know what sunk cost is. What up, accountants? Sunk cost is something that says it's already happened, so you shouldn't take it into account, meaning you've already drafted Jesperi Kotkaniemi. You can't change it. You shouldn't take into account the fact that he was number 4. You should just look at what he is today and what you're getting today. So by that pragmatic accounting logic, if you do not believe Jesperi Kotkaniemi is worth a late first-round pick and the dart throw that is the third-round pick, then this is a good deal for the Habs. I happen to sit on the fence where I think Jesperi Kotkaniemi is about to really grow into himself, and I think he may not have delivered to the way people expect a number 4 overall draft pick to deliver, but he will. He reminds me a lot of Vincent Lecavalier or Blake Wheeler without the physicality of either. Now, I know Blake Wheeler's not the most physical, but he uses his body and his size. Those two players are great examples of guys drafted super high that took 5 to 6 years to really grow into themselves before they became the dominant players they were supposed to be. This happens all the time in the NHL. We just get used to the fact that these kids come in as top 5 picks and dominate right from day one. That not is necessarily true for everybody, and I saw a lot of great growth from Jesperi Kotkaniemi, and I actually think he's a prolific goal scorer. So I think KK's ceiling is a top 3 player and a number 1 center. Not a top 10 center in the NHL, but a bona fide first-line center. I think his floor is actually a top 6 player, whether that be a winger or a centerman. So I think he's going to turn out to be a pretty good player. I just think it's going to take him some more time, maybe until he's 23 or 24. He's been in the league now for almost 3 years. Well, it has been 3 years. That's why he's restricted free agent. Duh. But he's been in the league for enough time that I think people have gone, well, that's enough. I've seen what I need to see. That's just not necessarily true. I think KK, the player, is worth more than what was returned to them, but I also understand anybody that sits on the other side. So there is my opinion versus the facts that are coming in. Then Montreal went and flipped one of those picks into Christian Dovorak. I don't want to spend too much time on Dovorak, but I don't really know what they're doing with this one. Okay, Dvorak's not bad. There's a character guy, plays that Canadian style game. A, not E. A. I'm really punny today. Canadian, A. A lot of things going on. French Canadian, Canadian with an A, Canadian with an E. Digressing. Christian Dovorak is a fine player, but when a player is averaging 30 points a season and you pay that kind of cheddar to go get him, I don't really understand it. I also don't really understand a lot of the moves that Bergevin has made this offseason. Danault has walked, which was really tough for Montreal, losing a bona fide number 1 center. You end up losing Weber to injury. They reshore up the blue line, which is good. You let KK get out of here, so that's 2 centermen out of your system. And yeah, you still got Suzuki and, maybe Goal Caulfield can move over or something. I know there's other depth pieces. And the play is to replace that with Dvorak. So I guess they think between Suzuki moving up to the first line, which is my understanding of where he should go, and he should. He's a darn good player and deserving to be a first-line center in the NHL. Dvorak steps into the second line is my guess and takes on more of a second-line shutdown role like Danault did. I guess we'll have to wait and see. But I think a first and a second were just way too high. I would have kept those picks to see what they turned into. It's likely that Carolina's pick that they gave to Montreal is going to be a late pick. But we'll get into Carolina in a minute. So what is Bergevin and the Habs doing? Not really sure. But again, I've said this before many times. They've always reminded me of the Finns in world competition. They're pesky. You really don't give them a ton of credit a lot of the times, and then it bites you in the back for not doing that because they end up burning you. They're a very good team, and Montreal did that last year with their cup run. But now that Carey's had a couple things of surgery, you've lost Weber, you end up losing Danault. Where does Montreal sit in the division? It's really anyone's guess at this point. Habs fans are going to have them locked into the playoffs. Non-Habs fans are going to have them on the outside. I have them at 5, but I'm also not surprised if they come in at 2 and 3 and absolutely ruin all my predictions on this channel going forward, because that's Habs hockey, baby. So it's always exciting if it isn't anything. So that's the breakdown there and my take. I would have signed KK if I was the Habs, but I understand taking the first and the third, and you're more than happy to be happy with that decision, Habs fans. Really was a win-win. Dovorak, though, I don't get it yet. All right, Carolina, bunch of jerks. They end up getting a top 6 talent at this point that's probably going to move over to the wing. Maybe he'll start on the third line, but he's likely going to move over to the wing for $6.1 million. Is that an overpay? Sure. Is that overpay something to be nervous about? Absolutely not, because it's only 1 year. And then after this year is done, you can likely re-sign the kid if he doesn't perform up to his contract to anywhere between a $3 and $4 million a year bridge deal or short-term contract while he grows into himself. So you basically just overpaid to secure the rights. And there's nothing wrong with that when you're prying out a number 4 overall draft pick from a team. Not only is the trolling game super funny from the bunch of jerks, but I actually think they win this deal by getting him to come over and giving up a few of those picks, because I think they're going to be late picks, and a third round's a dart throw at best anyway. I know big players like Point have come out of that round, but really it is random chance. Very, very lucky when you find the 2 guys out of the third round that end up hitting. Carolina, though, they also get a C grade for their offseason moves because they let Nedeljkovic go. So as funny as KK was, if they kept Nedeljkovic and they didn't end up signing Freddie Anderson, which was this weird swing thing. So Mrazek goes over to Toronto, Anderson comes down to Carolina, and then Nedeljkovic goes out to wherever Nedeljkovic went out to. Like, it was really hard to follow at this point. But anyways, he was the right goalie and the goalie of the future, and that money should have been dumped into him to keep him. They didn't. I don't think they get much of an upgrade with Anderson. And then Dougie Hamilton ends up walking in free agency. Carolina likely offered him a pretty good deal, but if they didn't offer him the same deal that New Jersey did and they lost him because they were playing around at the $7-8 million mark, then that's pretty tough. But I also can respect Rod Brind'Amour and co. for not wanting to be hamstrung like New Jersey is now to Hamilton and like Edmonton is to Nurse with such a big contract for a player like that. It's really tough because $9 million was worth it for Hamilton. He's a right shot D and he's a stud, but that's a lot of risk to put in one player. So I get it and I don't get it. Jesperi Kotkaniemi in, Nedeljkovic out, Hamilton out. I think Carolina's in rougher shape this year, especially considering the division they're playing in. So we'll have to wait and see how the bunch of jerks develop under the best coach in the NHL right now, at least according to Jack Adams voting, because I still got Trotzy and Q. But Rod Brind'Amour, your Jack Adams Coach of the Year award winner, will get this team going forward and ready to contend for a cup. It's really going to depend on goaltending right now for them, and it's going to depend on whether or not they can survive the loss of Hamilton. I guess we'll end up seeing, in an isolated instance though, I think Carolina wins this by prying KK away from the Habs, but really it's a non-event at the end of the day. All right, this has been Coach Ryan D. Thanks for tuning in.